Hi there, Cheng. Welcome, and thank you again for agreeing to come on to the show with us. How are you doing today, sir?
My pleasure. I'm doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me on, as always.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So, for those of you that might not know Chang, he is the Chief Operating Officer at Overclock Labs, who are the main contributors to the Akash Network. And so, we are here today on our fireside to talk about some of the top burning questions that our community has for you today. Are you ready, sir?
Let's do it. That's what we're here for.
All right. So let's start here with our community pool. So let's talk community pool first. So there recently was a proposal for marketing that seeks about what essentially adds up to a quarter of the total community pool that we have. This has raised concerns that some feel that there seems to be an endless supply of expenditures that are coming out of the community pool, from sponsoring events like Akash Accelerate to supporting the teams that support Akash, to the provider incentive pilots, and now a $2.3 million growth marketing proposal. Now, I know that the community pool isn't just for hoarding, but what consolation do you have for those of us that worry about the sustainability of these proposals? And secondary to that, there are concerns that this amount of expenditures weighs really heavy on the price action for AKT, and we are well below our highs. Do we really need to sell more AKT from the community pool now?
Good questions, and I'll do my best to answer all the questions. It's a lot to unpack all at once, so please call me out if I miss anything, and I can always go back to ensure we cover any gaps I may have left out. So, number one, I think to answer that question, I really want to start from the basics, right, and really think about where the community pool came from. So, the community pool is a tax on emissions from staking, right? So what the community pool really is a slow aggregation of tokens that have accumulated in the pool over time. And those tokens have come out of essentially the wallets, if you will, or pockets of what would have been staking rewards in the first place, whether part of that goes to validators, part of that goes to stakers. So you have to think of it, it's not a necessary from a token expenditure perspective. It's not simply we're spending tokens that would have that would have otherwise never been spent. It's not like that, right? So if you have tokens emitting to a whole bunch of people, right, those tokens, who knows what they might be doing with them? Some of them will obviously restake, some of them might sell, and so you can't just simply say what's being spent. And I'm not saying the community or anyone's characterizing this, but I'm just kind of painting the underlying picture here is the tokens going into the community pool have accrued over time by taking what otherwise would have been emissions that would have hit either validators or stakers, right? So that's number one. Number two is I think the context or how jarring some of these might feel because of number one, their size, right? And two is going to be how apparent they are. So for example, if I were to take $2.3 million and kind of to cite the growth marketing proposal of AKT and drip it out via staking rewards over a course of a year, through inflation, no one will really say anything, right? It's kind of like, okay, $2.3 million divided by 12 months, you're talking about what, 200K per month, and you divide it back down in days. It's going to be fairly infinitesimal, right? You're talking about less than 10K per day in terms of emissions that go out, and that goes out to hundreds, if not thousands, of holders, right, of AKT and stakers of AKT. So it wouldn't be noticeable. But the fact that they're concentrated in these big events or big proposals, I think is what creates a lot of the angst. So number one, it's not, I don't think in general, it's not creating any significant sell pressure relative to what would have been anyway. That might be a little bit of hearsay, but I want to contextualize that. That's important. Two is these proposals are, in terms of transparency, I don't think there is any other community out there that does it quite the way we do it, right? So with every event, with every expenditure, we always ensure that we send out the reports, right, that are accessible on our GitHub. It's completely open source, and you can see where the expense goes. And we obviously take a lot of pride in that, but we also take a lot of feedback from the community. So if there are specific elements of how the money is being used that isn't up to snuff, right? Please give us the feedback. Come to SIG Economics, come to any of our SIGs, come to the steering committee, most of all, and let your voices be known, right? And through platforms like this, where these concerns can be surfaced, and we'll obviously continue to enhance our reporting to ensure transparency and accountability. That's first, and that's there's that. The aspect of, do we need to spend like the funds now? There is an really unique and rare opportunity window of time that we have right now, right? Where it may not feel like it if you kind of just look at the Akash price, but if you look at the development of kind of the AI landscape, how decentralized, like the convergence of AI's growth, the convergence of crypto tech finally kind of honing in on utility more so than just Ponzi-nomics, and the convergence of certain things like the energy narrative and how that is going to impact like the proliferation of GPUs and AI, et cetera, all that kind of stuff. And of course, the intersection of the over concentration of closed source companies, right, and major companies out there that are increasingly putting a stranglehold on not just the GPU supply, but also models and just tools that I don't need to name names out here for people to understand right what you're using. So all of those factors combined really creates a really, really rare and narrow window of opportunity for Akash Network and those who want to do kind of play in the space, decentralized AI, DePIN infrastructure, right? And the like, to really to claim their stake and to continue to develop and grab market share. So I think in that vein, I think the time is nigh. I think the team agrees. If we don't take the opportunity ahead of us right now, someone else will, right? And so if you just kind of rewind the clock, again, I don't want to name names, but those who kind of were copycats and fast followers, right? Um, they were, they came out of the gate storming, and they, kind of blew their load in terms of
Their incentive spending,
GPU
right? Yeah.
incentives, right?
Yeah.
Their incentive program. It's people were saying, why isn't Akash doing more? If you rewind the clock and think back to the conversation and the prevailing sentiment during that time, why isn't Akash doing more? How come blah, blah, blah? How come this? How come they have so many more GPUs than you guys? Well, we went slower, but we did it right. We did it publicly, and we did it, in as permissionless of a fashion as possible. So I think hopefully through that we earned some goodwill in terms of how we're managing things. I wish things were going faster, but in this point in time, it is really important for the growth marketing initiatives to really do a lot of things. Number one, right, just general awareness, right? So increasing our SEO, search engine optimization, to ensure that Akash Network stays up on all of the search engines. When you look, if you go to like ChatGPT or even Akash channel, you look for, hey, ask it, what are some of the best alternatives to AWS or things like that? Akash Network comes up, and that's not by happenstance, right? We have no influence over that. The internet and just the information, the corpus of data out there has influence over that. So these are kind of things that over time builds that you don't necessarily see very obviously, right? So that's awareness. That's really top of funnel. It's a little bit vague, a little bit murky, right? And then you kind of come down to what is this growth marketing initiative aimed at doing, is going out there, reaching out there for the first time ever, pulling users in to say, do you want to use Akash Network's products, right? If you do, what do you want? If you don't, why don't you want it, right? For us to really get that information and really understand where our strengths and weaknesses are in particular verticals, right? And if you rewind just, I would say, where are we, July, if you rewind 7 or 8 months ago, maybe even longer, let's just say a year ago, Akash Network was very much in an exploratory phase, right? We knew we were deep in, we knew people wanted GPU infrastructure for AI, but we didn't really know how to productize it in a way that is going to be mass market appeal. At this point in time, just given kind of our stats and where the pips lined up and allowing us to understand what infrastructure people really want for what use cases, huge learnings from there, and what people want to use on the demand side of things, right, for tenants. And so those two things have coalesced, right? All the learnings have coalesced in us really understanding where we need to go now and what kind of audiences we should be targeting, right? There's going to be some experimentation still, right? And we don't know everything, no one does, but this is the time to really assess where our strengths and weaknesses are, why customers want to use us, how many do, and where our gaps are, because there are going to be some customers that are coming and say, hey, you don't quite have what we want, and what we want could be a myriad of things. And to really take those learnings and parlay that into further iterations, right? But if we don't, again, it winds back to the story, if we don't take this opportunity to do that now, somebody will else will take the opportunity. And then, there are still, newcomers and incumbents that exist in the space that are doing those things, right? And so it's really, really important for us to strike the iron while it's hot. Again, you have to look at these things decoupled from price action. I know it's really hard for me. It's difficult too. It sucks to see, our token ranking slip from, top 100 to like, high 200s now, right? But the imperative is there, and we have to kind of seize that, because if we don't, and these things aren't something you can just turn on and be like, hey, it's a light switch, let's flip it on, poof, we have customers. It doesn't work that way. Some of these things take a long time, especially for the size of customers, like the enterprise grade customers that we want to bring onto Akash Network. These sales cycles take time. Reaching out to them takes time. Sometimes we reach out to them. We as you ping them every other week or every week, and they're like, don't even talk to me. And then a
Mm-hmm.
month later, they're like, oh, hey, that conversation, by the way, let's talk, right? And so these things take time to bear fruit. And I want to just preach a little bit of patience from the community to understand what we're doing here. And of course, transparency and accountability is first and foremost here. And in the growth marketing proposal, we definitely, I think, wrote down a lot of KPIs we are going to be reporting against on a quarterly basis. And we're going to hold true to that, right? And if there are KPIs that the community thinks we should be held to that aren't there, come to, this forum, surface it to myself, surface it to Joe, surface it to any one of our team members within any SIG or working group and steering committees, etc. Right? These are all forums. We operate very publicly, and so I encourage anyone who has any sort of gripes or misgivings or just constructive feedback to come and voice them.
Yeah, so I just want to summarize, what you said, just to see if I understand it correctly. So on the part where we say that we're spending quite a bit of our community pool, your response is basically that inflation is inflation. If it's given out to, I guess, spread amongst all the stakers, or whether it's concentrated in the community pool, it's similarly there, and it's am I kind of getting that correctly? Because on the one hand, it's hard to disconnect that, right? Because yes, you're right, that is the same tax, but there's a thing of like, if you don't see them selling it, was it ever really sold? Versus here it is, right here, we're gonna sell this much right here, right? But in essence, can you add to my understanding? Because I feel like I got most of it, but I feel like I'm missing like the last 10 seconds of it. Where am I? What am I missing here? So you said that it is indeed part of the inflation package, and you're absolutely right that it's not like we're taking it magically from somewhere. It either goes to the validators and the stakers, or it goes to the community pool, and that is correct. But it's still the spending pressure, right? But regardless of that, I think the second part of your response really helped me understand that a little bit more, which is that the timing is now, right? And that really is, I think, the second part. I think I answered my own question. I think that really is the second part, right? Because then you're saying that based on where the life cycle of AI development is right now, right? Because then you have the reasoning models that are coming out now. I believe we were talking about waiting for the applications to come, the app layer to come. And if the app layer is indeed coming, then we really want Akash Network to be like the premier provider, or the one that generates the most interest at this time. And it doesn't help to generate the same interest 2 years later when AI is more prevalent and everybody already has all of their infrastructure set, and now you're on the back foot going knocking on doors going like, hey,
Playing catch up.
yeah, I know you like this guy, but how about us, how's it going over here?
Exactly.
And so really that's what you mean when you say things like, now's the time and we have to shoot our shot like right now, is because that's
Exactly.
where the development cycle is, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and it's great. I'll say two things in terms of that. You're absolutely right, and you eloquently summed it up. The other aspect of it, just to kind of double down on what you're saying regarding the development cycle, is the AI applications are growing now. They're in the growing phase, right? And so, if you don't catch the opportunities in their growing phase and they grow kind of this like entire callus, right, or shell around the things that they're used to, it's going to be really hard to change, right? Especially, let's say they adopt another deep network or whatever workflow that works for their tech stack. It's really hard to unpin them, unseat them from that particular setup. And so doing it early on, where we can insert in these applications, in these companies, and these projects early on, is going to be hugely important. First mover advantage or early mover advantage is I can't overstate or overstate how important it is. It truly is one of the most important things. Like, I mean, for example, I don't know, like you take different formats of things, right? Like OpenAI, ChatGPT, will it be the best? Is it the best currently? Yes, unequivocally so, right? But will it be the best? It, I think in the near term, it really doesn't matter whether or not it's the best or not. It just so happens to have so many users, they have so much incumbent advantage that they can ideate really, really quickly and they can move really quickly. And because of their user base, they can make a ton of money. So that's the first point in the development. The first point I'm trying to say is around early in the development lifecycle. We need to capture that moment and seize it to paraphrase one of my favorite rappers of all time. So there's that part. The second part is you think about the expenditures that we're pushing out now, whether it's through PIPs, whether it's through the community growth proposal or anything else. It's really about investment into the network. It's a reinvestment into the network. It's not just spending money for the sake of spending money, right? And the way, and I want to point everyone to an historical example where with Amazon, right? For I don't know for the those of you in the audience who are old enough to remember, Amazon for years was criticized. Jeff Bezos was criticized. Hey, you guys are making money, right? You guys are doing all this stuff. Why aren't you just simply paying out the excess revenue, the net profits to your shareholders via dividends or something like that, or share buybacks, right? To just like jack up the price. And Jeff was adamant and very, very consistent over years and years to say we are reinvesting into Amazon, right? And we're going to build like the one of the biggest conglomerates that to have ever existed. And I don't think anyone on this side of the timeline here today can say that he made the wrong choice, right? And so the he is here, us, the community over Cloud Labs. And we think that's the reason why we have the shoot our shot is because if we don't invest in the community, we don't invest in the tech, we don't invest in the marketing, we'll never win, right? And so we'll never grab market share. And so these are it's another proof point of it's really hard to see the token price where it is. Obviously, there are a lot of conflating factors to say, to say that there is no sell pressure, I think is disingenuous. One, of course, there's going to be some amount of impact, right, in the market. The mitigating factors, however, are one of the reasons why we submitted that proposal to enhance our market making capabilities, right? So as of Monday this week, that entire slew of AKT has been fully deployed and operational in the markets. Of course, things are going to fluctuate a little bit, just given sometimes CoinGecko, I've learned, and CoinMarketCap, their data isn't necessarily the most robust. It's just that based off of APIs and stuff like that. So sometimes information does fail. But at its full power, you should see over $1 million of liquidity, right, within 2% and -2% and +2% on each side. So AKT has never been, its markets have never been deeper, never been stronger, and the spreads have never been tighter, right? So that's going to foment a lot of, that makes it easier. Again, I've been ad nauseum about this for interested parties to come and trade by AKT, because in order to encourage people to get in, they have to know that there's a get out, right? So that is what we're facilitating here. And so that should mitigate a lot of it. And even way ahead of that, we were deploying these things in tranches, the AKT in tranches, and we have been since that proposal was approved. So we're working on all fronts to ensure that the markets are healthy, the markets are sufficiently thick, and spreads are sufficiently tight. In addition to developing all of the other major markets out there, right? So we're hoping that obviously that'll parlay into the growth of Akash Network into other exchanges as well, right? As the fundamentals improve, and the fundamentals improve, that becomes you need to obviously have the foundational layers that improve the fundamentals. So that's what I say: reinvestment into Akash Network. That's what we're doing right now, and not reinvestment, but investing in Akash Network to ensure that we have all the elements of growth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, that these expenditures are reinvestments. It's easy to forget that when you kind of feel like, I guess people are very, what's the word, possessive of the community pool. And so sometimes it does feel
get it.
I
want to see that number go up too, man. I'm with it. And it hurts every time we do it. That's what we when we do it publicly, it really, and having questions like this come to us is, I think, testament to like how I think involved and how much our community cares, which I think is a fantastic thing to have. And oversight is never a bad thing. I welcome the oversight and I appreciate it.
Good, because I got a lot more coming. I want to move on to the actual selling now, right? And this is Don, the CFO hat at this point. Cheng here is also CFO of Overclock, so this is a very appropriate question for him. You've at one point made a tweet before about Akash not or Overclock not market selling the AKT that comes out of the community pool. And the point that I'm interested in is the last one of the list that you did, which, by the way, if I can remind people, is that no market sale, limit orders, and then wherever possible OTC deals with long horizons, right? And it's this last one that I'm interested in, or rather, people are in the audience are interested in, which is that these OTC deals that are done, over long horizons, hopefully, are those deals publicly shared? Are they more held within
Actually, funny,
companies?
we haven't really done one of those. And I think we really should consider it because um, the difficulty in these OTC deals is timing, right? You want to find the right partner. You don't want just Joe Schmo, right? Person, super high net worth guy number five to say, give me the sweetest deal on AKT because I have a lot of money. That's not what we want. We want someone who is going to be accretive to the network, either bring some sort of cachet access to potentially, let's say, their portfolio of AI companies, right, that they're invested in. Maybe it's going to be, it's got to be something in that vein. Whether it's got to be accretive to the AKT community at large. And so, of course, going forward, if there are any OTC deals, we will, I think, preamble it within the proposal itself. So it probably looks something like this. Hey, we're going to do proposal X that will request, let's say, $1 million. Let's just use a square number, right? Of the million, we have some parties who are interested in acquiring a substantial chunk of it, and we'll say, okay, this chunk is going to go to some parties. I don't think we want to dox them and call out names. That part of the privacy stuff, it'll be a case by case basis. I don't know how exactly that will happen, but we'll definitely say, look, there's this amount under these terms that can absolutely be published, right? So let's just say of the million, we have 500,000 dollars of it allocated towards these people, and of the $500,000, the community, right? We will only get, let's just say, 450,000 because 50,000 of it will be a discount. So what we'll say in the community pool is we'll request 50,000 extra instead of a vol buffer, right? That we historically do in case prices go down. It'll be kind of a liquidity buffer. We'll call it some sort of discount buffer for OTCs, right? And maybe the term would be there is a 10% discount and 6 month lockup for the OTC deal at amount of $500,000 for X many AKT. So that's something we can absolutely make public. And when we get to that point, I think we'll absolutely publicize what that looks like. So it's I think we historically have not really found the right partners for that kind of stuff. And when we do, and at this point in time, especially given the momentum that's coming in AI and the tailwinds that are pushing these things forward, there has been growing interest in OTC deals for Akash. So in that vein, I think it's something that we'll definitely facilitate and we'll make it very public, not the names per se, but the deal terms.
That's really interesting. I did not expect to hear that no OTC deals have been done before, but it's also really good and refreshing to hear the exact requirements that's required to get that set discount. And the way you put it is that people have to come in with something. They don't just get the discount because they are make money bags. They get the discount because they can provide something, some access or some introduction, whatever that benefit is, and that's really good to hear. Just obviously from the holder's perspective, that's the case. Because I think the big
Yeah.
worry was that we're going to discount AKT by like 50%. And it's already at $1, so now we're
No,
going to go to 50
that's
cents, and then it's going to be
that's
dump,
the thing I
dump,
don't want
dump,
to
dump.
do. That's the thing we don't want to do. We don't want to engage in. So that's the trade-off, right? So the OTC deal. Why would we do an OTC deal with someone who wants 50% discount when we can just kind of put the orders up there, add to liquidity of Akash, and as buyers kind of buy and sell, and they hit the orders and they buy, we get the execution sufficiently anyway. Our trading volume is nothing to sneeze at. So if you put these things up, and because there's not just like kind of AKT movement, there's also the macro movement, right? Bitcoin moves, everything in the universe moves, right? So if Bitcoin goes up 3%, Akash may go 5 or 6% or 3%, and we have orders up there and goes up 3%. Those orders get executed. We get execution on those trades at above market prices because the market has rallied. Why would we kind of back end something that'll like not get the community pool the best bang for the buck possible, right? And I think another proof point that we have been doing this really in the best interest and the most capital efficient manner possible is the fact that we return a lot of tokens to the community pool, right? If you look at the reporting on our GitHub, there is a significant amount of tokens that get returned to the community pool. So for example, most recent one, the community funding proposal for programs like, people who are taking notes, who are helping managing the open source community and all this kind of stuff, we request funds on a quarter by quarter basis. The last quarter, we didn't use all of the funds. So this quarter, we don't request any because there's excess funds that we now will roll into the next quarter, right? So, or we can return them and then request them again, which is kind of annoying there. But that's a proof point, another proof point in many that we're here to really appropriate the funds extremely carefully. And we're not here to overspend it. And the wallets and all that kind of stuff, they're publicly out there. If you want to go sleuth around and look, it's all on chain, right? There's no hiding. And the wallets are publicized and the funding proposals are publicized. The reason is the reasons are publicized as well. So yeah.
So I do want to ask a transparency question now that we're talking about it. So I do know that the accounts are publicized, but from what I can see, it's going to be like a big bucket details on the dashboard, right? Some have asked about the actual invoices, and we have heard Greg at one point talk about putting those somewhere. I don't know the status or whether or not we ever got around
We'll
to
do
that.
that. Yeah, we haven't gone around to it. So that's something we'll definitely do. We need to essentially like part of it's like redacting the identifiable information, right? But what we can do is say exactly how much we bought from how many vendors at what prices, and we can absolutely publicize that stuff, right? So yeah, I mean, if you want to look at their specific invoices, I think we'll have to cover up like names, addresses, and things like that. Just part of the agreement signed with the businesses themselves, right? They don't want that stuff to be known because sometimes there are discounts, whatever this and that. That's part of their kind of the agreement and the privacy stuff there that we have to respect. But yeah, that's absolutely something we'll publicize either in aggregate. Maybe we'll send out the information in aggregate and see if people want to drill down further, and we can drill down further from there if need be. Absolutely, nothing to hide in that regard.
Perfect. Okay, I mean that makes sense to me. That at least it's going to be available. I think. I mean, honestly, in the community of X amount, there's only going to be X amount of people that care about that, and it's important that we do pay attention to those people because those are the people that do care, and they are going to help the rest of us, who might not be sleuthing as hard, really trust what's out there. So I do appreciate that transparency, and I do want to say that definitely Akash has the most transparent things of any blockchain that I've seen. So this is definitely something that I would have expected. I was just surprised that I didn't see it from the get go after I've heard it a while back. That's all. So thank you for the update on that.
For sure.
I have another question, and this one's going to be more direct. You've answered a lot of it already, so I just wanted to ask the part that is that wanted more clarification from you specifically, and that is
all right. Okay.
As the full marketing proposal, like the full amount, $4 million, is going to take over 50% of the pool. The question is, and I want you to, in your words, how is this pool replenished, right? And so we talked about inflation. But specifically, if you can just run through that one more time, just a clear clip of, how is the CP replenished and why are you not afraid of spending half of it on one proposal?
You got it. Before I answer that question, I'm smiling to myself, just chuckling a little bit, is because I remember the day when we asked the community maybe over a year ago, hey, when we were adjusting inflation, we also wanted to move community pool tax from, I think, 40% to 50% the first go around. And there was significant pushback in the community. Why increase the pool tax to 50% from 40% when the pool was so big? And we're like, well, guys, the pool is big now, but when we start to spend money against it, it'll shrink, right? And so it won't seem so big later on. And here we are many months later, and that's kind of borne out to be true, right?
That's fun.
So
I do remember
it's
that.
yeah, so it's like you can't look at it's you have to see the forest, not just the trees here. It's not just, oh man, this thing here is this size, why grow it? It's kind of like, why are we investing or spending money on Akash Network? We should just conserve. I pose the question, the thought exercise here for everyone who says, you know, um, why are we spending this money? We shouldn't be spending this money. I'm not saying anyone's saying that, but let's just say for the sake of argument, the options were spend the money to invest in Akash Network's future. Some of it might be misses, some of it might be hits. We don't know, right? Some of it is going to be experiments and hits, right? But you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So experiment B is you spend money, some of it will be hits, some of it will be misses. Experiment A is you don't spend anything, right? What would Akash Network look like? I want everyone to kind of think about it if none of the community pool initiatives were ever spent, right? And if simply the tokens were only emitted to stakers and validators, where would Akash Network be? We would be a glorified Ponzi-nomic token, just like the hundreds that already exist, right? There will be no utility on Akash Network, and nor the features that were developed, from then to now. GPUs would have never been brought on board. PIP1 would have never existed. PIP2 would have never existed, right? The community presence and the awareness and the branding that exists out there now, the kind of the respect and the cachet Akash Network carries wouldn't have existed now. Right? So I want to remind people that it's not one of the, you have to look at, if you didn't do this, what is the alternative that would have been done, right? I challenge people to think about that. It's not just, oh, you guys are spending too much money. Where would you have liked to see the money spent instead, right? And so that's the broad part there. I want to contextualize further. I love this kind of level of stuff. The more specific question: how is the community pool replenished? So the Akash network, just like every Cosmos chain, right, proof of stake chain, has an emission rate. That emission rate is the rate at which new tokens get created onto the network, right? And so the community pool is funded by taking part of that rate, those tokens that are emitted, and putting it into the community pool. So currently, that tax sits at 50%. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, 100 new tokens get emitted per day to stakers and validators. 50%, 50 tokens get taken and put into the community pool on a daily basis. So that's kind of how exactly the community pool gets replenished over time. And it is a direct function of the community pool tax rate, which sits at 50% right now, and a function of the inflation rate, which sits at, I think, 12%, or some of the official staking rate is something like 9.6, 9.5%. But I think the inflation param max is at 12%, I want to say. I could be wrong. I'm so sorry if I got the information wrong there, but that's how the community pool gets filled.
Okay. And then, yeah, that makes sense to me. And I knew how the community pool gets filled, but that's always good to hear. And I want to go back to what you were saying. I'm trying to remember now what you were saying before about uh, the where would you like to spend it on, right? So let's go back to that for a second. So where would we like to spend it on if we didn't spend it on these things? I think that a lot of other chains that I've seen, they just make the decision, right? That's not something that I don't remember a proposal deciding whether or not you're going to pay this much or that much to providers on anywhere else, in my opinion. And so that's also a lot of that. But also, I feel like Overclock pays for a lot of things too, right? It's not just a
Yes.
100% community pool. And so I want to shine a little bit of light on that as well, because and my next question does have a little bit to do with that, which is that we do notice that Overclock doesn't charge a community pool for 100% of what everything costs all the time. It's like a percentage. Sometimes Overclock pays a certain amount and then puts a certain amount into the community pool. I guess the question really is that, like, what is that about? What informs these decisions? What basically makes it
Yeah.
OCL's responsibility? What makes it CP's responsibility, according to you guys, right?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it's when things are highly experimental, highly risky, there's a portion of the risk that OCL, the core team, bears, right? So, for example, with the growth proposal, right? We have paid, worked essentially with these guys for about a quarter, the team that we're working with, and pay that completely out of Overclock's own treasury. And so, much of that treasury was funded from Genesis, right, through the original token emissions themselves and subsequent staking rewards. So it comes from the protocol itself, right? That's one part. And then two is it would be unfair to then go back to the community pool again to fund every piece of it when we're have low degree of certainty, right? We have a strong conviction, but low degree of certainty. And so we try to absorb as much of that uncertainty as possible until there is a kind of a break point, right? Where the degree of uncertainty is reduced and the impact is more apparent, right? And that's when we kind of make the decision to say, okay, this is the community pool thing. And for the growth initiatives, a lot that just completely benefits the Akash network at large. And so that's again one of those things we wanted to kick the tires, assess whether or not these guys are actually good at what they did, and they deliver what they initially promised. And so in the original proposal, like obviously a lot of things were shared as far as the early wins were, and that's when things migrated to proposal. Another example is with the PIP funds, right? Originally, these were highly experimental. We wanted the community to backstop some of to supply the compute, but then Overclock Labs would administer, right? Do all of the kind of the work associated with administering the aspects of the PIP, right? On using our own time, using our own money and human resources to do so. Just because like you need to have someone overseeing the stuff, right? And it's non-trivial to do so. And so those are two examples of doing that in Overclock Labs. And that's the reason why these kind of decisions are made is number one, is it highly experimental? If so, Overclock Labs will kind of sit on the risk, if you will, and to absorb a lot of that risk. And then once it gets to the point where the ask from the community is a lot more obvious and the payoff is a lot more obvious, that's when we go to the community pool, because we can't go with a half-baked idea. We have to validate a lot of things before going to the community pool. If these things were half-baked, it sets a terrible precedent because we're open source. And so we need to do a good job of that. And that's the reason why we do the way we do it.
Okay, that makes sense. So a question that's adjacent to that will have to do with the acquisitions of Praetor and Cloudmos in order to create the console experience that we have today. Some have expressed that it feels a little strange to acquire these projects via the community pool. Can you help shine some light on, because this is like history at this point, can you shine
Yeah.
some light on the history, take us back to the reasonings behind this? Because
Yeah.
ultimately it's the Akash console, so I see that as that's not overclock console, but the idea is that what were the original thinking behind why the CP acquired it instead of, let's say,
Yeah.
overclock.
Yeah, so actually, Overclock did for both of those. I think Overclock contributed about 25 to 30% of the cost of the acquisition, right? And it was a almost like a contribution to in concert with the community pool to bring these things into the Akash network fold, right? Fully. And so, because both Cloudmos and Praetor, they were separate clients that were not directly integrated part of the Akash native experience. And what we realized is you need a holistic native experience for developers as well as providers, right? And so two choices. You can either build it yourself, or if there are community members who have built something of tremendous value and quality, which these two projects were, integrate them, buy them, because the people who built them, they need to eat, right? So they need to be paid, and they need to be paid for their efforts. And so they've contributed significant time and effort developing that intellectual property. And this was a way to pay them for the effort and to fold it into then Akash network, like globally as Akash console now, right? One cohesive native experience. And that is extremely important because you want to have a unified experience. You want to have the same UI, same UX, same flavor, so that everything just works well together. And the reason for doing so and why the community pool paid for it is because everything was open source. Previous to that, a lot of it was closed source, right? And so in order for the closed source things to be developed, it was really hard to get community pool funding for it. But as part of the deal with both the community pool, both the Cloudmos guys as well as the Praetor guys, is we'll pay you for it. Overclock Labs will subsidize part of it, and we'll ask the community pool for another portion of it. to fold your IP into Akash Network and make it completely open source, right? Which is currently exists today. And it's open sourcing is really was the linchpin for the community pool funding it. Because if it wasn't open source and it was simply IP held by Overclock Labs, why would we use public funds for it, right? So in this case, it's completely open source, it's community property, not Overclock Labs property. And that's the reason why I use the community pool.
Right. So in a way, I guess thanks for paying for some of it beforehand, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah. Overclock Labs actually helped the community
Yeah.
pool out in this regard, right? So yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of it, because now we also have people who are employed by Overclock Labs that used to work at Praetor and Cloudmos, right? So those are
Exactly.
now team members working on their project, but now under the community guise, right? And this
Yes.
and so and let me ask. So in that way, so for their salaries, that was also part of the proposal, right? If I recall correctly.
That's right, of the
Okay.
acquisition. Yeah, so their salaries for a period of time, and that period of time was only meant to integrate and migrate their stack into into Akash Network. So that was the entire premise because you don't just buy the IP, you need to have the people there to then take that code, merge it into the Akash Network thing, and make it a holistic thing. So that's what they're. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So today their salaries are now paid by Overclock for
that's
realsies.
right.
Okay. So I think
Yes, exactly.
that's the misunderstanding that some might have, because they would believe that those are forever, like from the
Mm-mm.
CP, but
Yeah,
it's just exactly like you said, just for that integration period. And now Overclock Labs is the employer and fully pays for that work. Okay.
that's right. That's right.
I'm sorry, some of
Exactly.
these sound a little bit on the
No
nose.
worries. No worries at all.
Yeah,
Sorry to, I do, I have like, can we wrap up in like five
yeah,
minutes, Joe?
yeah,
Or
yeah. I
we
have
can always have another day.
no,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. I only have one last question, and this is going to be as long as you take it. Okay. And the last question really is with regards to the speed of development. So recently, I saw some of the certain AEPs were pushed back, such as verifiable compute, among others, and it has
Hmm.
been pushed back. And honestly, there are other items on the roadmap that has been maybe pushed back in the past before. So I have a long time holder that has some criticism that Akash has not been up to snuff when it comes to meeting roadmap expectations, and that is in the past and currently now as we readjust the timing of such proposals. So how would you respond to that?
Um, they're right. I think I want development speed to be faster too. And I wish that, so plainly speaking, I really want everything to go faster. I want development to go faster. I want ideation to go everything, right? Now, like, of course, the devil's always in the details. And so in terms of like TEE, confidential compute, why was that pushed back? Well, a lot of reasons. One is probably we should have managed that project a little better with a heavier hand with regards to the counterparty that we were working with there in UT Austin. The scope wasn't particularly well defined, and like they went in one direction. They wanted to zig, and we wanted to zag, and that was just learning experience. That was, I think a misunderstanding and poor project management right out of the gate. So we won't repeat that mistake again. And this is why TE now it's been taken under the kind of the wing of the core team. Now we're going to do this ourselves, like no BS, no like leaning on other people and all that kind of stuff. So that's one aspect specifically to TE. Other areas, and generally speaking, is because we are an open source project, I can't emphasize this enough. The coordination cost with an open community is really freaking high, right? So when you're like every month, like just look at the amount of SIGs and working groups and time we have to spend managing those things. If we didn't have to spend those resources, we would have a lot of hours back, right? We probably have like at least 20 to 50% greater productivity within the company if we didn't have to manage that. If I didn't have to have calls like this, I could be spending my time doing other stuff, but we need to address the community because we are a public facing entity, right? We are a public network, we're a public protocol. So these are kind of costs that are incumbent with it. Not that those are excuses, those are just some reasons as to why things are a bit slower. And so I do have, so those are kind of reasons broadly, one specific to TE and confidential compute, and one kind of broadly speaking why things are a little bit slower, right? Because we do integrate a lot of conversation and input from people before making permanent decisions. those are really important. That's part of building trust with the community as well. And as a result, sometimes timelines and things get a little pushed back. So it's kind of, I hate to use this turn of phrase, but at the cost of doing business this way, right? And we are keenly aware of that cost. And so this is one of the reasons why Akash ML was launched, right? And Greg came out with that during Akash Accelerate, is there are some elements of Akash Network that need to be developed and need to be developed really, really, really quickly without public consensus on every single thing using private funds, right? And so those are things that are going to be built on Akash Network using Akash Network exclusively, right? But those are things that are going to be like essentially making AI workloads productized and easier to use, right? So the GPUs are essentially this raw material, right? And you need to package sometimes those raw materials vis-a-vis an API, right? Like Akash Chat API, vis-a-vis Akash Chat, Akash Gen. These are all proof points that we built out to see, show the world that, hey, the Akash Network is for real and here to stay. And so that's another the final reason I'll put kind of in the bucket as to responding to the pace of development and hitting the roadmap items that we really need to hit. Some of these things are gonna be a little bit slower, simply because, or a lot slower because how public we are and how much we integrate the public's input into all of these things.
So I guess that's really interesting to hear, and it makes a lot of sense. It's just you don't think of it that way when you look at the timeline and you're like, oh, why are these things delayed? But it does make sense that there is a lot of coordination and a lot of SIGs. The calendar is really full, and there's a lot of slow moving parts. So I guess that's really the good with the bad, right? Because at the one hand, I keep praising the open sourceness, everyone having a say, and I suppose we don't really think about the costs involved and this is what it manifests into. Right. And I also want to say one thing, which is that I do think that there are a lot of things that Akash does deliver, right? Clearly, like GPU marketplace and whatnot and
Absolutely.
all the things.
Yeah.
So I do think that, there are a lot of wants and each of those wants maybe satisfies a certain amount of like customers that might use it, like each feature. And I think that, I just want to, just put it out there that for the community that it could be that, certain features have more priority because they'll affect more people. And those are the ones that are going to be on time. And the ones that, that could be a little bit of, secondary or maybe affect less people might take a little longer. So it is what it is, I guess, when it comes down to
that. And I encourage those who again, have gripes and have feedback, et cetera, to really come to the SIGs and working groups to voice their concerns, maybe contribute. Hell, we always need more people contributing. Sorry for the background noise.
Yeah, no worries.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm going to let you go because I know that you're short on time as usual. But I just want to thank you so much again for taking the time out to answer these questions. From time to time, I'm going to collect them for you, and as long as you're willing to sit down and answer them with a straight face, which you have, then I very much appreciate you, sir. So thank you so much, Cheng, and we'll see each other soon.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thank you, and thank you to you and the community. It wouldn't be the same without you guys. It wouldn't be possible. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.